Good evening and welcome to Safford City Council. Reminder, if you have a cell phone, would you mute it or turn it off? It's up to you. We have one absent today, or tonight. Our Pledge of Allegiance is going to be offered by Vice Mayor Richard Ortega. Our opening prayer will be by Councilman Mike Andazola. Would you stand with me and remain standing for the prayer as well, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day which you have bestowed upon us. We thank you for this rain, Lord, which we really need, Heavenly Father. We pray for all those who are going through hard times right now with this coronavirus, and we pray for all those that have passed, Heavenly Father. And we ask you to bless each and one of us tonight, and we are thankful for our staff and our employees that guide the city, and the city council may have listened to what we have to say tonight. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Councilman. 5 citizen comments on agenda items. We have one. I'm going to take that up on our work session area instead of right now, and then non-agenda items. Do we have any? Just that one? Okay. And then we're going to go ahead. I'm going to ask the council for a table on the presentation of the United Way donation. Everybody okay with that?
So moved.
And we're going to go ahead and close our regular meeting and reconvene into a council work session. So with that, we're now in a council work session, and it's discussion of the following items for information and discussion. Item 9.1, which is recreational adult use marijuana. John?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. At our last meeting, we had some discussions regarding recreational marijuana, and basically we were in an information gathering stage. Tonight we're still in that stage, which is why I put it on the work session. There were some questions raised. In particular, one in particular had to do with the passage of the previous ordinance that addressed medical marijuana and also off-site cultivation. And so what we were able to find out in looking at our past records and looking into some of the state law was that the cultivation plots that were associated with medical marijuana dispensaries, they tied the two together. So unlike the recreational law that allows us to take any of the subsections, whether it be retail, cultivation, manufacturing, as individual components, when the original ordinance was passed regarding medical, all cultivation had to be associated with the medical dispensary. So you couldn't do off-site cultivation on its own, as is possible with the recreational law. So the decision that we made was basically to move forward, again, based on our earlier conversation. This is what I've gotten so far, is in light of that, we want to do retail only and prohibit the remaining categories: manufacturing, cultivation, and testing. And what the plan will be to add to the existing medical marijuana dispensary / cultivation ordinance, we will add the recreational marijuana ordinance to that. So that's kind of what we came to. And again, I got Susan Anderson on the phone too, if there's any more specific questions or anything, but that's kind of where we ended up in terms of gathering more information, and that's the approach we were going to take.
Okay, and I have a concern with the use of cartoon characters for the display on windows or whatever. And I went ahead and made a call to Bill Sims, and he did some looking into and got back to me and said that, it's one of those areas where when it was written up into the ordinance for the state, with the voters voting on it, kind of gave us a little bit of an area where we could do something, but it could definitely be challenged in court. And he says that, if the council would like to add in there that, hey, on displaying of cartoon, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because one of the most industry leaders, as far as I'm concerned, is tobacco use and drinking and driving. I think take more lives out than what recreational use of marijuana would do. And they have quite a bit of guidelines on that as far as what they could use. They can't use Camel Joe anymore. You guys remember when Camel Joe was there? And they, so I think we should at least be just talking about, are we okay with cartoon characters being used if there's a place down on, for instance, our district area, Main Street, advertising recreational use of marijuana, like a cactus or something like that being up there. So if we want to discuss that, he did kind of massage it, say maybe you guys could have something written up, or staff could write something up that says it just doesn't look appealing, and leave it at their discretion. But at the same time, that he said he'd be willing to defend us because of the way it was written. And then remember, this is an attorney talking, so that he just knows that there was one that failed in the Supreme Court on the use of the medical marijuana. He said something, it did get challenged. He gave me I left that paper at home. He gave me the site specific or whatever the heck it was, and it did get challenged, and it did strike. But he said the way it's written with the recreational use did give us some leeway. That's what I understand. Is that what the call he gave you as well?
That's what I got as well. And we can put language in there that's strongly discouraged, because there's the reasonableness kind of language that often comes up with this kind of stuff. And then, if it doesn't get challenged, then you don't have an issue. If it does, then you can remove it. It's not like you're putting something in place that would create a public safety issue or anything like that. So we could try to word it in a way that encourages them and strongly encourages them without being definitive about it, and then see if we have any issues with that.
And John, let me jump in, Mayor and Council. And so what I'm going to do is I need to take a look at the 17 pages of the new state statute and see if there's something specifically in there regarding regulation of signage. One of the things for the city of Safford is we don't regulate signs, basically window signs. So they're not regulated, they're not counted towards the maximum square footage of signage you can have. So I will look through the ordinance, the Arizona Revised Statute actually, and see if I can find some language in there that may refer to signage. I seem to recall on my first read through there that there was something about signage in there, and so I'll take a look at that and see if I can apply it.
Okay, I think the thing too, Susan, is I understand the signage. I'm just seeing if us as council would like to add into there, or have staff to strongly disencourage the use of cartoon characters for the recreational use of marijuana. I just think it just looks tacky, especially in our areas that it could happen. It could be downtown. I drive downtown today and noticed a store that's there. It's in between two other reputable, they're all reputable businesses, but at the same time, I just want to, encourage good displays of character and what you're trying to sell and what you're trying to use it for. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I agree with what you're saying, because the little ones, what's the first thing that attracts their eyes is a cartoon character or something like that. So I'm for trying to find some verbiage that we could put in there to, try and hold it down.
Mayor, I think it has to be something.
I think the best way to approach that would be to take a look at what the state statute says, and also approach it in a way of, we already have sign regulations that limit the size of signs, and so this more applies to signage and windows, similar to what we have that people do downtown for Christmas time and things like that. And so I'll take a look at that and see if I can find some language in there that we can use and apply to actually prohibit signage in windows for these type of establishments.
Okay.
Susan, what if we have a business that's using it like a billboard or something, that they use it on the side of a building?
Billboards are a whole separate situation.
Well,
they're allowed.
Yeah, let's say if they do that.
Yeah, they're allowed in the city, and we can't control content.
Okay, so are you guys? Is everybody okay with the having something And Susan, will this be able to be brought back to us within the time frame, so we're not, we don't get behind the 8 ball?
Yes, so the intent is to have an emergency ordinance that'll be brought to City Council on February 22nd. And I may have a draft ordinance for you on your workshop that I think is February 12th, John, if that's the correct date. So I may have a draft for you by that time. I should have a draft for you by that time.
Okay. Arnold?
I know when Camel Joe was around, they got them because they were targeting youth, is what they came up with. So I'm somewhat with you guys, targeting youth, or targeting an audience that's not old enough to partake of what they're selling. That's something we could look into.
Good? All right. Then we're gonna go on into, is everybody okay with that before I move on? Anything else we want to talk about on the recreational marijuana? I think
I got it.
we're on that. Okay. Go ahead.
I just know
Councilman.
when the lady spoke, there was a lawyer with them, and I believe we did get the information of who it was and what exactly they were here for that. And I believe it's in the minutes, thank goodness. But wanted to make sure we captured all the information on the lobbyist.
Yes, yeah, and apparently she had several clients. I mean, I think this recreational marijuana is generating a lot of interest because it could generate potentially a lot of money. So people are, I think, trying to show up and make sure that councils they limit their discouragement of allowing the establishments to end up in their communities, because that is an option.
And I just want to make sure I heard you, because not to go back on all of it, we thought that there was 3 separate things: the manufacturing, the cultivation, and the sale. And now I think you said that they're not separate in some ways, after all.
Well, the initial law dealing with medical dispensaries, which is the establishment we have now, the way that law was written, it says that basically that you have to associate cultivation with the dispensary. So you can't just separate those two. Now we're adding the recreational ordinance to it, which is written differently in that regard, and so you have the option of prohibiting any of those activities. So we can do the retail only on recreational, which is the new component we're passing. But the previous one required, if you had cultivation, it had to be associated with a dispensary. There was no standalone.
And the other thing too is John and Susan is, I don't want to discourage sign painting on downtown Main Street for everybody. I am truly picking out a business, you know what I'm saying? I mean, a recreational marijuana. I mean, I would do the same thing for a tobacco shop if they wanted to open one up. I think that kind of stuff needs to be limited. But if you know, an insurance agency wants to paint Santa Claus on the building and then at the top of their star put whatever insurance company it is, hey, I'm okay with that. I just think we need to limit it to the site specifics, such as a retailer that's trying to catch the eye of a young kid to get into that store is just not acceptable as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
As long as it's legal.
Right, so my sense I'm getting is, and again with Susan in the background, in terms of, we want to look at our signage as it relates back to the state statute as a starting point context, and then specifically what language can we use to, if not prohibit, at least strongly discourage.
Right.
Okay.
And where they sell the recreational marijuana, does that mean they can also sell all the paraphernalia that goes with it?
You know, that I'm not sure of off the top of my head. I don't know if they can sell ancillary stuff, accessories or not. I'd have to look into that.
The statute mentions marijuana and marijuana products can be sold to customers. So I'll have to look in the definition section of the statute to see if and how it defines marijuana products.
Yeah, because one would assume that that means directly related to marijuana as a substance, not as some kind of device with which to smoke it or whatever. But we'll look into
Right.
it.
Really interesting, but where we are in today's society. So, is everybody okay to move on?
Yeah.
Item 9.2, the manufactured home permitted use and the age/age. John and Susan, you guys want to kick us around on that one?
Yeah, once again, I think at the last meeting, we had some questions about how we had picked a date, 1985, which seemed somewhat random, and we really didn't have a good rationale other than we talked with our attorney, and they seemed to be okay with picking that as a year. There were some communities that have done that, the majority have not. And as we talk further with Bill and we'll look further into it, and we also got some public input on it, it seemed, at least based on my take on how this was going, that we would be better served leaving the date as it was in 1976, as opposed to trying to pick some date that would be sooner in terms of the age of the home itself. And I think in addition to that, I think part of the issue, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is really about aesthetics, how these homes are placed, how they're maintained, how they're set up. And really, there are other ways to get at that. We have an IGA with the county. They do a lot of the work on manufactured homes for us. They have an agreement with the state, which essentially mirrors the federal law. And then we're a co-signer essentially as a locality with the county. So they look at the installation, construction, and overall rebuilds that happen. And then we as a city can look at, fencing and some of the ancillary issues. At least that's my understanding. Maybe Councilman McGoy can embellish on that, but that was my read of the IGA and also the state statute. So if the goal is the aesthetic, how the house is placed, what it looks like once in place, then they're probably picking a year won't get you there, because as we discussed, you could have an older home that looks really good and a newer one that doesn't. So I think there are other ways perhaps to get at what we were trying to accomplish other than picking the date of manufacture.
You guys, a manufactured home doesn't increase in value. That's just straight up. It decreases in value. And I think we could, to meet a need that was addressed to the council, I think his trailer was, or his manufactured home was pushing 84.
I believe that's correct.
And I would like to see a date on it. 74 that's 31 years. That's like, they're done. They've reached their limit. I would like to put a date on it. I mean, to see the goal, 1980 plus aesthetics, I mean, but to meet everybody's goal, I would like to, I mean, that's 21 years. I mean, we're already in 2021.
That's 40-something years.
40 years. Holy cow, where am I at? Thanks. That's why I have a school teacher on. 40 years.
Yeah, right. And I was the one that brought up the concern, as long as it's legal,
Yeah.
like you were saying with the signage, as long as it's legal, and it doesn't sound like it's legal.
Technically, I would say that no, it isn't, that there's a federal statute that says 76, and I think that's.
And also to clarify, the ordinance isn't 1985, it's 35 years, so that the window would move. That's what the planning and zoning proposed, I believe, a 35-year-old manufactured home, not 1980. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So that it always moves to 35.
Right, so a year from now, it's a 1986.
Okay.
And my concern was the legality, and also, as John mentioned, whether or not this particular solution will solve the problem that we wanted to solve. A magnificent 36-year-old home is going to get disallowed, and a terrible 30-year-old home will be allowed.
Right, and then you run into the issue of drawing that line and having someone end up on the wrong side of it, and then where do they go from there?
So Mayor and Council, a little bit of my understanding about this, and Councilman McGoy may be able to expand further, is that there is maybe one or two companies locally that move the manufactured homes from one location to another, or move a new one onto a site. And in my conversations with people, that person will assess an existing manufactured home and assess whether it is it is able to be moved. And my guess is that for that particular type of business, it's a liability issue. That if they're moving a home down the road and it falls apart, then it's on them for transporting that home. So I think there's some protection as far as, you know, if you have a dilapidated manufactured home that was built, you know, mid-1976 and newer, that the people that move them would not necessarily move it because of the risk of having it fall apart in transit.
Councilman McGoy, would you like to chime in on anything?
I agree with what she just said. I like the moving target. I mean, picking 1976 and staying with it doesn't accomplish anything. That's an arbitrary date in history when HUD took over the inspections of them. But based on the valuation of them in our neighborhoods, I mean, if one's already there and it's 50, 60, 70 years old, we're going to allow it to stay.
Right.
It's the moving them that's really touchy, and nobody wants the liability of doing that. Plus, moving that into a neighborhood is going to bring the value down, just because they do depreciate rather than appreciate. I like, you know, I would have preferred 30 years to 35 myself, but I agree with Councilman about you're ruling somebody out. But I don't know, maybe they can come to us with an appeal. If they can show us that it's a artwork house, then we can look at it. But I think this is the right thing to do, is because if we pick 1976, at some point we're going to have to come back and revisit this. But if we move it along, I mean, it's going to have two. It's going to give you two choices. You either leave it where it's at, or you buy a new one. Kind of as all your choices are going to be.
So, John, as what Councilman McGoy said and what Councilman Hemphill said, the 35-year from here on out, is that what was proposed to us?
By planning and zoning.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so
1986 and newer this year, but next year it'll be
35 years old.
1987.
And then the individual would, and also have it written to where they can appeal to the planning and zoning.
They can appeal anything,
Or to
anytime.
us at
anyway.
any time to see if we would allow an older one to move in. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, anybody can
Can
appeal
appeal
anything we
anything.
do, so I can see that. I mean, if somebody had a really nice one and they wanted to, before they moved it, show us how nice it is,
But then, of course, that's like you
but
said, the
then it's up,
movers.
then we get to at least look at it. But I don't foresee that.
Happening.
Well, we know we have at least one.
Yeah.
And John, we would.
So if I may,
I'm
so if
sorry,
I may
Susan.
jump in,
Susan, the train's coming, so you gotta talk loud.
Perfect time.
Gotta stop our baseball game.
We got a train coming, Susan, so
no.
let her rip. I got the mic over here, so. Go ahead.
Wait a second.
Perfect timing.
So one option for city council to consider, if you do want to move forward with this ordinance and with the 35-year, there was a gentleman that came in that's currently in the middle of a rezoning process, and he has, I think, a 1983 or 84 manufactured home that he wants to move onto his site to replace his mom's home that burnt down over on 10th Street. And one thing, if council wants to accommodate that, you can have in the ordinance itself, you can change the effective date. So currently, as the ordinance is written, you would do the second reading on this day, and the effective date would be February 25th. But you could bump that to April, May, or June 25th. change the effective date. That would at least allow this one person to get their manufactured home on site. It could allow others, though, also. But we don't get a lot of manufactured homes moved into the city to begin with. So that's just one suggestion I have, is if you want to move forward, to bump the effective date maybe to June 25th. I don't know if the city clerk has any issues with that or not.
Can I ask something?
Yes, Vice Mayor,
I'd
sorry.
like to address that too.
Okay. When an individual's gonna move the manufactured home to a different site, are the neighbors contacted about it or anything?
Did you hear the question?
Yeah, the particular property right now is in the process of being rezoned. It still has to go before you. It's gone before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then it'll be going to you, I think, on the 8th of February for a public hearing and a first reading of the ordinance to change the zoning of that particular property, which is right next to the townhomes that are on 10th, the townhomes that are roughly on the corner of 8th Avenue and 10th Street. And then there was a house kind of next door to those that burnt down. And so, I mean, that's just to accommodate this one person, but it's just a consideration for council if you want to change that effective date to a later date to allow this person to proceed. It still has to go through the public hearing process. The city council still has to approve the rezoning. And then it has to have its first read, second read, and then a 30-day wait period before the zoning actually takes effect.
And at planning and zoning, that's when the neighbors around that lot can be involved. That's when they're aware of what's gonna happen.
Through the rezoning process, so right now through the rezoning process and the public hearing process of that particular property, all property owners within 300 feet of that property have been notified of both the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, which already occurred, and the City Council public hearing, which is coming up. One person sent an email that they were not in favor of the rezoning. Another person attended the neighborhood meeting that's required as part of the rezoning, and they expressed concerns about just how the building would be skirted and the type of stairs, or if it would have a ramp. So we really, out of those, property owners within 300 feet of the property, we've received 2 public comments, one completely against it, and then the other one just was concerned about the skirting and the stairs.
Thank
What's really interesting is, we're in the process of going with one, and then we have another citizen who says no. So you understand what I'm saying on this? It's like, so we're willing to make a stipulation for one, and then somebody said no, and that they're against it, and we're not even listening to them either. So this is an interesting tug of war here.
Well, yeah, my preference would be, and I forget the gentleman's name, I apologize, would be that he didn't have to appeal at all, but if we're gonna look at 35 years, I think we're making a mistake to wait till June so one person can get in under the current rules, as opposed to, if we're gonna allow appeals, then we should move forward and have the appeal. And again, I'd rather he not have to appeal at all. I'd rather it stay 1976, because that's legally what we're supposed to do. And then I guess my next concern would be, even if we have a procedure for somebody petitioning an older home to be allowed, what do we do with a 30-year-old home that's terrible? What process is there for actually accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish?
I think that becomes more of an enforcement issue, doesn't it?
What would we enforce if it's 30 years old?
Well, I think you're assuming that there's some issue with the home, whether.
Just aesthetically.
Yeah, so there would be, depending on what that issue might be, I think that becomes actually.
That depends on what's in your code. If you have a dilapidated structure, you write them a
Yeah.
Right, and I guess
dilapidated structure.
the follow-up to that would be, then why isn't that just the process now? Why do we need to, if it's in the code for the manufactured home to get up to a certain aesthetic level that's pleasing?
It's not, that's the problem.
So the 30-year-old home
is not the answer.
That's terrible. The code's not gonna bring it up to an aesthetic.
No, we still have to take the next step and put some rules into the code, into the zoning code.
So we've gotta do both. We've gotta go 35 years, and we can't
I
just
think
stay 1976 and change the code. We couldn't?
Yeah, there's a property maintenance code that was not adopted by city council when the 2015 building codes were adopted. Those property maintenance codes go a little further in requiring property owners to maintain their buildings in a certain manner. Right now, the most that we can do is we can require that if there's broken windows on a building, or if the door, like let's say it's a vacant building, there's broken windows and the door's open, that we can require that the owner basically board up the house against unauthorized access. That means, board up the windows or fix the broken windows and make sure the house can be secured and no one can get in there. And that's about the extent of what we can do, aside from like grounds maintenance and junk cars and things like, and garbage and things like that.
Susan, can we change that though? Can we add paint to the, or can we not?
You can do whatever you want.
The aesthetic portion is ours, not the
Right, I guess
county's.
I'd rather us do that than try to circumvent HUD.
Even though
on the-
we work with
Well,
the county.
You're
it's
you're
not their
thinking that
rules.
that 76 year means something in the rest of the world. It doesn't. That's just when oversight changed. I don't know where that came from, that you can't do this, what we're doing, because it's done all over the place. I don't know where you guys got that information.
Well, I guess you talked to the lawyer, did you not?
That's what the
discussion we had.
Well, and that's what I told you when we started. You cannot do it because of safety. You have to do it because of the property value.
That's right.
That is the difference in what gets it kicked out of court.
Yes.
But if we're doing this because of aesthetics and property value,
Yes.
that is a null and void argument.
Okay, I
That's
guess
right.
the next question then would be, where in our ordinance does it say anything about aesthetics or property value? It
That's
just says
exactly
35
the
years.
problem.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, but
Right.
this is the first step we have to take,
Right.
or we can't get anywhere else. I think. I mean, because we have to address the property value, and aesthetics is a part of, but we have to address this part of it before we get more of them.
Yes.
If we're gonna go there. I mean, if we're not, let's not. I don't, I do care, but
Mayor and council, so one thing that's a possibility is to continue this item as far as the second reading, and I can modify all the whereas that are in the beginning of the ordinance, where I can add some whereas it is, understood that manufactured homes depreciate, whereas site-built homes appreciate. I mean, I can add a few whereases in there that could perhaps, if we get a legal challenge, will give us more of a strong footing to stand on.
Susan, I like that, and I also hear all the discussion up here, but I really want to focus back on what Councilman McGoy said. And, the 35 years is definitely a heartburn for me, and now I understand this whole process, and so I would like to see us go to a different time than what planning and zoning had recommended to us, which was a 35, and to see if we can agree on tightening that up, from 35 to a 30, or if you were, I want to see 20, but hey, I'm willing to meet you guys halfway on it, but I think we should tighten that number up, because 30 years on a, do they even loan 30 years on a manufactured
they won't
home?
they won't loan on a used, period.
Right, at all.
Right
But on
now.
a brand new one,
2
what's
years
that?
old, you can't borrow money against it.
How many? 3?
2.
Two.
1. I don't think a second move.
Yeah.
I
That's what I've
don't
heard.
know of anybody who will loan money on a move of a used at any age.
Yeah. So what, do they even loan, do you know, or Susan, do you know if they even loan up to a 30-year on a manufactured home? Do they go 30 years, or is that they do go about 30? Okay.
And Mayor and council, I really don't know about the financing aspect of it.
They have to be
But
a-
that's something I could look into. That's certainly, I can call around and see if I can get some information on that, and that can be part of strengthening the justification portion of the ordinance. And maybe that's one of them, is that, you know, it's actual knowledge that banks will not provide a loan on manufactured homes that are older than XYZ.
Councilman Goy?
So I think with that, I mean, you can still discuss the age limitation, but again, I would suggest to continue this item, or maybe the city clerk would recommend tabling it till staff does some further research to strengthen the justification for putting an age limitation.
Okay, Councilman Goy, you have one more thing?
The only way that I know of, and this is kind of neither here nor there, because if somebody has the money to buy one and wants to buy one,
Right.
that's irrelevant. But as far as I know, even your local dealer can't get financing for one if it's not a land home package.
Okay.
Every one that I've seen go into a park has been paid for in full up front.
And so I would like to see that year come down, and also us be in process of the verbiage of the aesthetics on the outside and how to address that. I think we need to be moving forward on that at the same, pretty close to the same time, or just like right behind it. I haven't heard anything over here.
No, I'm following Mr. Hempfield. He's brought up some good questions, and some of them are still somewhat unanswered. So I don't know when we're gonna talk about it again or finalize this.
The thing that, the focus went from an age to all of a sudden a gentleman showing us a piece of paper about a HUD. And then Councilman McGoy brings in, it's like, that's just when HUD came in and said, hey, we're gonna take over the, oversee of how you build these homes. Correct? And that's that date. That doesn't mean that cities and towns can't come in and write their own ordinance and where to place these things. And so that's why this gentleman is having to go through the whole rezone, because council before us had actually set a place for these things and where these manufactured homes can go. And so therefore, that's why we're here, and that's why a gentleman would have to rezone to be able to get a manufactured home into that area, which is a housing district area. And so that's why we're here. And knowing that a manufactured home comes in and devalues the house next to it if it's a house that's, you know, brick and mortar or whatever you want to say. And so, you know, it's really interesting discussion. And I think the whole thing that brought it up has been an interesting discussion on a property. And so therefore we saw it, we were realizing it, and all of a sudden we came in with a 10-year, and then everybody kind of like, hold on. And, but I'd like to shorten that up. Vice Mayor and I, what do you think? 30 or 20? Could you go with 20 with me?
I could go with 20.
You know?
Because you know what, you kind of, what you mentioned with the previous councils, they belong in a certain place. You know, and they do depreciate, and it affects the neighborhoods, so.
So does that help you, John?
No.
You're still just as stuck as us?
No. You
No,
know,
you-
we'll move
you-
forward. I guess we gotta go back to P and Z, Susan, and ask them again if they wanna shorten the time frame to 20 years. Is
No,
that-
we can just say we want 20 years, and we can keep
Okay,
going
so-
with this ordinance. We can adopt the 20-year ordinance tonight, if I'm not mistaken, or change the reading.
Amend the second reading, right?
Can't we work on the reading?
Yes, if you want to just change the year, you can, but as far as adding everything else, then we would have to.
Have to come back to that.
Correct.
So we could do a year today that is meaning always running, meaning, so it's not just 20, it's like next year it's still 20. It kind of keeps going.
Correct.
And we can do that by the second reading today. And then staff's got to come back in and rewrite the aesthetics area, which Councilman Hemphill brought up some good ideas as well.
Which is a
And now we got to address those at the same time.
And that would be a separate ordinance.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
Tammy, so I'm sorry, Tammy, I didn't quite hear you catch what you were saying.
If they want to just amend the year for, you know, how the age of the manufactured home, they can do that tonight. But to add everything else, they wouldn't be able to do that. You'll have to bring that back as another ordinance for approval.
Do we have to vote on the
And
20 years?
and so for mayor and council though, do you want to
Second reading.
temporarily table this item so I can go over the whereas to strengthen those? so that may hold up better to a legal challenge?
Well, your whereas is they're gonna come in with your attorney if we did that, right? I mean,
It would be, and Mayor, it would be some research I would have to do and to try to come up with some justification for the limiting the age. And that takes a little bit of research. I just don't want to pull it out of the air. I mean, I can certainly, it seems to be understood knowledge that manufactured homes tend to depreciate where site-built homes tend to appreciate. But, you know, I have to look at some other aspects of that.
what do you guys want to do? If we table it, we gotta bring it back on another day and time. It's gotta be on the next one. Or we can read the second ordinance, which we put a 20-year time on it. And if you like it, then I do believe it's our second reading. And the following time is the vote on it. The second reading is it.
Yes.
Yes. So that's what it would
If
be.
you decide to change it tonight and you vote on it, that's it. It's not
That's it.
coming back. It's adopted as is with whatever amendments you make in your motion
And then
tonight.
we'd bring back the second part of that, which would be, we starting to write the manufactured aesthetics looks of how they're to look and how they're to be skirted in the city. And that is either we recess them down, or they have to be brick and mortar around them, or, you know, a vinyl skirt or whatever. We can set that in motion and make that happen at a later date.
Correct. You can have Susan set that up and bring that back at a later date to add to this section of the code within the ordinance of what the requirements are for this section here. And
I'm ready
you
to
can
move
add those
forward with it,
requirements.
with the vote myself.
Mr. Hemphill's been carrying me with him. I'm just hoping his questions got answered.
Well, they got answered. I won't support it, but that's why there's 6 of us.
What part bothers you?
I kind of think it makes sense what Mrs. Anderson's saying, to go back and get the legal terminology correct, to be defensible for why we're doing this, because we are not, we cannot be saying because HUD's not keeping them safe. It has to say it's because, what it does to the value of the neighborhood. So I kind of think putting it back to her and let her get that legal stuff right, because we can't change it later.
I think Tammy has an issue with us tabling it.
No, you can table it. Actually, if you don't like this one, then you can actually vote it down. Or if you want her to come back and, then she can write up a new one, and we would have to start it over, because that would be substantial changes to it, so we would have to vote this one
Let's
down.
vote this one down.
Correct.
And then
then
staff's gonna come back with us with the new ordinance that'll have to go with the first reading and a second reading.
Correct, and then essentially it will come back for first reading in February, again, second meeting in February with an effective date at end of March. So that's the latest you're looking at, would be the end of March for an effective date of that.
And realistically, doing that will play
Explain it
into
though.
Hernandez's hand too on it.
It'll release his hand.
Let
but
me jump in
it's
there.
still up to our vote on them allowing the manufactured home to be in that site specific. If P and Z okayed it, brought it back to us, we could either up theirs or down theirs.
But this change date would be after that zoning hearing. So that would, okay, I kind of like that.
After that one.
Susan, go ahead.
So Mayor and Council, and if I'm understanding the city clerk correctly, she's suggesting that what you can do is vote down the ordinance, because it's a vote and the second reading, and then I would have to take it all the way back to do the legal ad in the paper and go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then to City Council for a public hearing, public hearing of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then a first and second read. Whereas if you table it, I think I can do the modifications and the justification, though Tammy, correct me if that's wrong, and then bring it back to you, as opposed to taking it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission doesn't see the ordinance, which has all the whereas in it. They just discuss the issue and have a public hearing.
So Susan, with the ordinance, the way that it reads right now, and what you're what they're suggesting would be substantial changes to it. So you would have to redo the ordinance. in order to bring it back for what they're wanting on it. But you've already done the planning and zoning hearing and everything pertaining to the information, and also P and Z's recommendation. They're going with the recommendation, they're just adding what they want with P and Z's recommendation, so you wouldn't have to redo all of the public hearing and everything else with P and Z.
And so are you talking about just the year, or are you talking about adding some other types of conditions, or are you just talking about me strengthening the whereas part of it, so it's legally defensible?
It was the aesthetics is what's good.
We do separate. The aesthetics part is separate, so if you
Okay.
change the year and the whereas is to make it more defensible.
Then, so we
No matter
table
what we
that,
do,
and vote on it next week.
Yeah, well, you could, yeah, but the aesthetic part is separate. no matter
Separate,
what.
that's separate.
Yeah.
So that's not changing it too much then, Tammy.
Correct,
We
so-
could, we could do that.
Yes,
And
so
she
you could
wouldn't
table
have
it
to go back to
tonight, she
P
could
and
just.
Z or anything.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I'm
Yes.
understanding.
Yes.
Okay.
In
All right.
other words, we don't have to vote down the ordinance.
We just table.
We're just gonna
it.
table
Just
it.
table it.
Yeah, and then they'll bring back the aesthetics of it and everything else as conditional.
separate time,
Yes.
completely separate.
For, as a separate ordinance.
Which is why we did the work sessions first tonight.
Yep.
So that we knew what to do with this when we weren't sure.
Everybody give John a pat on the back for that one. Perfect, John. I knew you had it and going. Everybody okay with those modifications? Yeah? Arnold is not.
Mayor and council, did you want to do you at this point want to modify the year that, it's, right now it's at 30, no older than 35 years? Do you want to change that as part of this reworking?
Susan, I like the 20-year verbiage.
And so do I.
That's Vice Mayor.
Oh, I want 25.
And Councilman Goy wants 25. And I'm willing to, but if I can't gather, if Vice Mayor and I can't get enough on 20, then we can massage, but we don't really want to. He's kicking me all the way from over there, so.
I just say the 25 because it's the half-life of a manufactured home. They're all depreciated out in 50 years.
Okay,
And that does give you something defensible right down the road.
okay,
Then 25.
okay.
Is
25.
that a consensus on 25?
I got 3 out of 3. Mike,
Yes,
I haven't heard from you all night. You good with 25?
no, go to 20.
He'd be good at 20, but he'll go 25.
So Tammy, if we do just the years, can we just amend? as we
Yes,
go?
so you would just, if you're wanting to pass it tonight with just amending that year and that's it within this ordinance, you can do that tonight. You just have to make, whoever motions it has to make those amendments in their motion, that they motion it with the amendments of, and state what those amendments are.
Okay.
And then it can go through tonight.
Do we think it's defensible the way it's written?
Do we think it's defensible, Susan, the way it's written, or would you prefer to work on the whereas?
I would prefer to work on the
I
whereases.
agree.
Okay, that's
I
what
kinda think so.
that's what the consensus is. You gotta work on the whereas.
So we'll
So
table
we're
it
tabling.
and bring it back.
Yes,
I
when it
move to
comes up in
table.
the regular meeting, you'll just table it.
Okay, we'll table that when we get back into regular meeting. Thanks, Susan.
Okay, now-
You're not done. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so do we have a consensus on the time frame? Are we talking 25, are we talking 20, or do you want to
No more than
discuss
20.
that when?
I can get you a consensus of no more than 25 tonight.
Yeah, and you know what, Susan, we bring the 25, when you go to vote, you can change it
That's
as you
right.
see fit. and amend it.
That's
Yep.
right.
So
Bring
let's
us
go with
25.
And then we'll go with that. So go with 25. I'm getting a lot of nodding heads
Okay.
to the affirmative.
Okay,
And do we have to take a vote on tabling this?
When we
No,
get
we're
back
in
into the
work
regular
session.
meeting, we will.
That's all we got, the work session.
Does anybody else have anything on manufactured home? Okay, that's gonna bring us to the mobile court, or mobile food court. And you guys, I was approached on this, and so I'm gonna hand you guys some paperwork. There's 3 there. John, do you want one?
Please.
I had a gentleman by the name of Jeff Wiley, and he wants to, he's hook up, so, we're gonna be talking in our regular meeting, I believe, on the parklets, or is that this one?
No, that'll be on the work session.
That's still on the work session?
Yeah.
And the reasoning for that is because we're, one of the reasoning is COVID related and helping businesses expand outside their walls. And this gentleman come and of course, because it's a mobile site, the city already gave him the red light on it. And he said, listen, I want to hook up to the city power grid so I don't have to run a generator. I want the trailers to be left on site. And I also want to hook up to the city water supply. And he even talked about using the city sewer supply. So he's going to end up picking up 3 entities. And the site, if you guys are aware of it on that, it's on the highway, and it's right next to would that be old L&L Auto? Right next to the old L&L Auto building? That's dating us, McGoy. But anyway, and so I just wanted to throw this out there so that we can see that, and he wanted to design it as a courtyard. There's two vendors in there. One of them is the Big Tex Barbecue, and the other one is the one that partners with the Big Tex Barbecue. I think it's a I don't know, Mexican.
Are they the ones out in Thatcher now?
They're the ones that's in front of Tractor Supply. And,
Outstanding food.
and so he's really, really close by hooking up to the city water and the sewer. And he said in fact, I just reading his notes, he even wants to pick up the trash can. He wants to have a trash container. So he's pretty much a brick and mortar by hooking up to our utilities. And it's like, I think it's a no-brainer that we would want to move forward with receiving this gentleman's sales tax revenue, as well as water, electric, gas, sewer, trash. To me, I think it's a win-win. So I think my goal here is to just try to get some direction so that City Manager John and Susan can work with this client and help fix up a vacant lot that's kind of an eyesore and start getting some traffic that, God love our neighbors, but I'd like their sales tax money too. He gave me a price. I'm not going to share that with you tonight because, it's his price. It's not my price, but it's a fairly good share. And what do you guys think?
I would like to move forward with this. I think it's a great idea myself.
Was he turned down, Mayor?
Susan? She there?
Yeah? Mhm.
Was this gentleman turned down?
No, he was given options. Basically, it's like a mobile food truck, and that's considered a temporary use. And our zoning ordinance is very restrictive for mobile food trucks under temporary use, where they're allowed to stay on a site for no longer than 48 hours. Then they have to be moved off site. They can be on a given piece of property for no more than 10 times a year. So that gives them 20 days on a given piece of property, and they have to have the owner's permission in order to stay there. Then they can move to another site and go through the temporary use process for that site and just basically rove around the town in different sites and get different property owners' permission. But our mobile food vendor ordinance in the zoning code is very restrictive. As far as somebody connecting directly to electrical would probably require some type of pedestal, so that may be a Dan question. And then connecting directly, because it's still a mobile unit basically, but connecting directly to a sewer would be probably a question for Morgan on that, on how that would actually, how you would work all that out. And it'd still be a mobile unit, one that could be taken off site and disconnected. It's almost like you're creating an RV park for food trucks, which perhaps you can do. We just need to put it in the code that way. I think, Mayor, my understanding is that it's more than one person that's actually interested in this, or having a whole bunch of mobile food trucks at a given site somewhere, maybe in the C2 district. I'm not sure of all the details. Then you need to have parking and people coming in and out. So those are some details that would need to be worked out. I'd be more than happy to do some research on, it's a popular thing across the country. There's a lot of mobile food trucks all around the country and guidelines. They also have to go to the health department as part of that. I don't know how someone could just hook up the city water and electric, and then you have to figure out how are they going to get rid of the waste that's generated. There's also the waste issue of, they're cooking, and so there's oil grease separators and what might be required of the sinks and things like that, depending on what exactly they're doing.
And I know that they're not dropping any grease in there. I mean, I don't know that for a fact. I can't say that. But the whole thing is a vendor wants to come in, and there's ways, just like there's no difference between a pedestal at a RV park that you plug into that's there. And I know for a fact that there is a power supply that's on that piece of property, because the piece of property is owned by Mr. Hatch, and Mr. Hatch has been contacted by this vendor and is willing to work with them. And power did get ran there because they were running it for a pump, because they were trying to do that medical or that marijuana thing or hemp or whatever you want to call it. So there is power there, and I don't know where the water is. I don't know if the water has been capped off or if the water's there, but we're catching them. And to me, I think it's because I know our code right now says for mobile vendors they have to move around, and then I think, how much is that fee? $160 or something? What is that fee?
I don't know offhand. I'm sorry. I think it's either, I don't know. It's either 150 or 50. I'm not sure offhand.
And so, I know it's pretty steep, and I don't even know that we even keep an eye on these mobile food vendors, if they stay in one location all the time or not, because pretty much when they set up is a weekend, and we're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we come back on Monday. So, and I know that food vendors definitely have to go through quite a bit with the health department as far as their inspections. So, I mean, I know, anyway, I just wanted to kick this around and see if the council's interested in this, and if so, then it'll help to bring in revenue. I don't think you need to go into it as deep as you thought with parking and this and that and the other, because the whole goal is to get people to come in, stop, grab their food, and they go. Although this vendor did say that he would put in a, like a little sitting area if they wanted to. So I mean, there would be some parking, but remember that it is, it's an area that's right off the highway that we can get some traffic. Vice Mayor.
I agree, and I don't know the people personally, but just seeing the way that area they're occupied now on the couple of days, they keep up, and I think that they would be a plus to that little area there.
I do too.
I really do. So, and like you say, with Hatch, and there is a certain amount of utilities there already. So look into it and see if we
Susan,
can help them along.
I think, John, if we could help them along.
Yeah, I'd love to look into, we gotta get some of the details first, and then we can figure out where we go.
But the thing is, we got to be very cautious with our details, because we can detail ourselves right out of the water. I get it. I get that you like that community development to be black and white, and I understand that, especially where we got with some of the businesses that happened prior to Susan coming here. But at the same time, respectively, I'm going to ask that we realize where we're at today and what we're planning on doing down on Main Street. With that kind of vision in mind, we also got to have some vision as well. We can't just sit there and say black and white, no. What can we do? It's hooking up to the utilities. You're collecting 3 utilities. That's a big. They want the trash. That's another one. So to me, it's like, we can work with people, and we should be working with people.
I'm not saying we won't. I just want to understand the issue and what's going in better, and then we'll look at what we can do. Like I said, I'm more interested in saying yes first until we have to say no. So let's look and see what the options are and what exactly we're talking about, and then we'll see what we can come up with.
Okay.
And looking at this third page of what you handed out, that would be kind of nice. I think that one little turn-in place, it's pretty rough when you go in there.
It is, and that's, he knew that, he'd address all that. He wanted to keep the tree for shade,
Uh-huh.
but
Okay, good, because, fine, I'm for, looking into it.
So Mayor and Council, as I mentioned, our, mobile food trucks are very, very popular all around the country. There's TV shows about them. And as I mentioned, our zoning ordinance is very restrictive. So I can look into this and see, and propose some text amendments. It has to go through the text amendment process, but propose some text amendments to loosen those regulations and to allow, more food trucks to come into town, and they can extend the time they can stay on a given piece of property, things like that.
I think the big picture to be looking at is, what are they doing? Are they just traveling in and using their own power, or if these people want to hook up to a site specific? To me, I think that's where we need to understand the difference of a food vendor versus, who knows, this guy could probably go a brick and mortar at any time. He's tested the waters out. It's been really good down in Thatcher. He's saying, hey, I want to move to Safford. And I'm sure his rent there is going to be more than what it is at Tractor Supply, but he feels that that's a better location for him. And so I think that's the site that we need to be thinking about as you're massaging it and stuff for food vendors. I think I understand the direction the previous council was going with this, but at the same time, we got to relax with ones who wants to hook up to the power grid, ones who wants to hook up to the water grid. Those are standby fees. Water, he's not going to use that much of it, but yet you're going to collect so much of it. And then if he does have restrooms in a trailer, I'm sure it's just for employees. But we're sending now what, $50 down the drain. So I don't know. It's just a plus, man. It's a plus for us. So think about that as you massage that stuff. Try not to make it too hard for an individual. We good?
Okay, we'll do.
All right. Anybody else? Anything on the food court? All right. Item 4, 9-4. Oh, when is the other one on?
Other what?
The parklets after this one?
No, that's gonna be on the 12th.
The 12th? I thought it was tonight.
No.
Okay.
Did Danny hear you?
Yeah. Danny, I'm sorry. I should let you speak. I'll catch you as soon as we're done with this budget.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're kicking off the fiscal year 2022 budget with a budget guidance presentation. So I'll begin discussing some important dates and some things to remember, and then John will continue with some additional budget discussion.
Mayor, if I may, if you want to let, Danny's here to speak on the parklets. Do you
Yeah.
want to let him go first? Because this is going to be a while.
This one is? Okay.
So you want
he
to let
probably
him
wants to
go?
get home.
Yeah, I think we should let him go.
Sorry, Danny. I thought we were talking about this tonight. In fact, I even made John come down here too.
For the record, my name is Danny Smith. I live at 350 Cochise Street here in Safford, and tonight I have my Safford Downtown Association hat on. I've talked with several of you all and members of staff about the parklet idea. And as far as our downtown group is concerned, we are in favor. We think it sounds great. I think the outdoor seating and adds life and vitality and gives people options, and in a COVID world lets people sit outside too, and sounds great to us. There's 2 points I wanted to address. One is the topic of parking, because as we understand it, it might be maybe 3 spaces per parklet, and there might be 5 or 6 of them, so we'd lose 15 spaces or so downtown, which is always a concern. But I wanted to let you all know about the thought that we've had for several years, and that is that we have a parking perception problem downtown, certainly. Meaning people want to park right in front of where they want to park. And I'm the same way. We're all programmed that way. But it hasn't always been that way in downtown. Many of you that have been around, we used to have parking meters downtown. And people, like my mom, would park behind Sears, and we would use Sears like the breezeway to avoid parking on the street, kind of like you do at the mall, where you choose where you're going to enter the mall. And you walk from the mall parking lot into the mall, and you don't think about how far you walked. In fact, the distance from the El Charro parking lot, the City of Safford parking lot, to Chase is the same distance from the middle of the Walmart parking lot to the Milk. But you would never do that. You would never park there just because we want to park right where we would like to go. So our goal is to create a parking disaster downtown in our downtown association, meaning we want to make it so busy, we want to create a real parking problem someday where people have to walk, right? And when we go visit other places, other towns, and on vacation or other places, we don't think, man, that place had the best parking. No, we think it had a great downtown, had a lot of things I wanted to go visit, and we spent some time there, and we got something to eat, maybe we saw a movie, maybe found some things to buy. That's the experience that we're hoping to get to. When we get there and we create a real parking problem, then we'll be successful. There are some scenarios where some parts of the day, for certain businesses, they have a real life parking problem for 30 minutes or an hour or so that goes away. But we hope that if you go to a movie down there and you have to park 3 blocks away, or the distance from Jack in the Box to the front of the movie theater, you won't think about it. You'll just find a place to park and go to the movie. So from a parking standpoint, we don't think that it'll be an issue. We appreciate everything that the City of Safford has done and continues to do downtown. You know, the Christmas, all the Christmas lighting, those wreaths that go around, the lights, I forget the cost of those. I think I want to say they were $12,000, and the Christmas tree was several $1,000s. Every year you put all the lights up, you make another investment every year, and we really appreciate that. That's just one example of the amenities that the City of Safford offers to downtown businesses, and we are really thankful. We hope that as you consider the parklets, that would be the same scenario. Whereas if you would like to put those down there, then do that. So I hope that answers any questions that you may have. If you have any questions, please ask.
Okay. We'll have to call Danny. I'll give you guys a cell phone number, because it's a non-agenda item, and I thought it was an agenda item. Sorry.
Oh, no, yeah. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to get that feedback. We discussed the Downtown Association, so I wanted to get their feedback.
Right.
And then on the 12th, we'll have the ordinance, so we could talk about the way it's laid out and all the particulars, which will take more time, so I thought better on the 12th.
And I do want to also echo that the Downtown Association just doesn't represent restaurants. They represent all businesses downtown.
Yeah, we do. And so, I mean, we can't represent everyone and make everyone happy, nor can you all, right? But the consensus that I heard at our downtown meeting, which is open to anyone and everyone of the businesses downtown, which we invite them all for each meeting, the consensus that I heard, everyone was in favor.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Danny. Appreciate it. All right, Alma. So according to John, this is going to be long, huh?
Well, it may not be, but I just, let me do my best to lengthen it, though.
Oh, wow.
This is something new that we haven't done before, and I've had some discussions. And so, in a past life, the way we kicked off the budget process was by getting feedback from council as to what they wanted to see in the upcoming budget cycle. And of course, that could be a myriad of things. It could be stuff that's kind of, you know, you do it every year, There could be specific projects that are occurring, there could be long-term projects. So the idea is that we present to you what we have in the budget and the things we're focusing on based on what we're looking at in our past discussions. You have an opportunity to review what ultimately I would like to see us pass as a resolution with this as an attachment that sets the stage for staff to then go forward in that budget year. The other thing that it does is it sets a record year after year. So if some of our goals end up being longer term, and we've had some discussions about strategic planning and so on, this provides us with a record that we can use to string together the annual budget process and have it working toward more long-term goals, not just an annual goal. So this document was our effort to put a draft together so that rather than being in a meeting and saying to you, what do you want in the budget? And you're kind of sitting there going, okay, well, can I think of something on the spot? We thought, let's put this together, lays out the budget process and some areas of focus, give you a chance to review it, to hear it, and then see if we can get feedback from you based on that. So Alma's going to start out with some of the budget material, and then I'll get into some of the more issue area stuff.
Okay, so first, the budget process is regulated by state statute. And so these are some of the important things to remember while we're going through the process. The tentative budget, once it's approved, you're setting the maximum expenditure limit. And so it's important to realize that once that's approved and adopted, then you can no longer increase that level of expenditures. The tax levy can sometimes be a little tricky. If you remember, even if your rate is not increasing, but your revenues are increasing, that has to be posted for 60 days. And there is very specific verbiage we have to use when we post that. And the tax levy can then be approved 14 days after the public hearing. So we have at least 14 days, so we have to wait. For the final budget, it has to be approved after the tentative budget has been published once a week for 2 consecutive weeks. So again, a minimum of 14 days. And we recommend, or the league recommends, that the final budget be approved by July 27th. And so these are very specific, regulated by state statute that we have to follow.
Date.
There's 2 different, so July 27th is the recommendation if you're approving if you're approving a increase in your tax levy. And then if you're not, the date, I believe, I'll have to verify, but I believe it's August 3rd. So you have a little bit longer if you're not approving a truth in taxation.
I thought you said the league approved, suggested that we approve our budget at a certain time. That's the league's approval. When is the final time you absolutely have to have it in?
Mayor Councilman Lopez, let me clarify that. So that is the required date. The league is saying if you are approving a truth in taxation, then you have to approve by July 20th. And that is, they are basing that on the state statute's requirements. So they provide us with those dates ahead of time in a document that's called It's Budget Time, and they send that document out to all of the finance directors within the state. And so that is the date that we have to have it approved by if we are having a truth in taxation approved as well. If we are not having a truth in taxation, then it is a different date, and I believe it is August 3rd.
So if we don't change it, it's one. If we do change it, it's another.
Correct.
State statute,
Yes.
which I'll get the final date eventually.
Okay, so the budget calendar. So on January 20th, that's already passed, but we did meet with council, with Human Resources, and Mr. Casella, city manager, were in on those meetings, and we discussed the health insurance options. Then January 25th, tonight, we're introducing the budget guidance. February 1st through the 4th, we will begin meeting finance, city manager, and the individual departments to go over the operating budgets. And so that will be a week-long process. For February 12th, that's the work session, the Friday work session. We'll be reviewing the revenue projections and reviewing the fund balance. On February 22nd, we will then have a recommendation on the employee benefits and also some discussion on the PSPRS. Then on March 8th, we will bring to council a CIP summary. And that same week, after the council meeting, so March 9th through 11th is when we'll have the individual council meetings, budget meetings. Will be a similar format to what we did last year, so it'll be with 2 or 3 of you at a time, and we'll have a booklet and some documents for you to be able to review, and those will be some tentative numbers.
Hey, Alma,
Yes.
since you are meeting with 2 or 3 councilmen at a time, is there any way you guys can take notes and then pass it on to us, what their concerns are? Because I can't call them up and ask them, then I'm already violating. But if a councilman has a suggestion or something, it's of importance to them, I would like to hear it.
Okay.
And so, when I was on council previous, we always met in here, and I'm not saying that's how it has to be ran, because it was a lot of days and nights. And we'd meet in here and we'd go over the whole freaking budget, like, for an hour or two. And they all got to hear the concerns. The vice mayor raised a concern. Councilman Lopez got to hear it, and vice versa. So to me, I almost feel like when we're pulling different ones in, I don't get a chance to hear it, or the councilmen don't get a chance to hear what would be a concern, and they might say, I really agree with that kind of a concern, or I'd like to see that. So if we do that if you're going to do that, I think that kind of information needs to be shared with all the council via email or whatever, and we can't discuss it, but at least know that so-and-so said, hey, I want to keep the pool open a month longer, or go a little bit longer, or whatever, to where it's like, you know what, I can stand behind that. I can get behind that. I can get in that boat with them, and we can row together. Just process that, or at least maybe instead of having that, have a meeting where we all get a chance to discuss at the same time.
It's both. So this was an addition. We didn't do this before, so we started it last year just to give more time and a little more opportunity and a more relaxed atmosphere. But what we can do is we can bullet point things that are brought up, and when we bring it back to those open discussions, whether it's in a work session, that can be one of the documents that we provide, is a list of all the suggestions that happened as a result of those meetings.
Do you think that could possibly be provided ahead of the meeting, to where,
Sure.
for instance, if Vice Mayor has a deal, and I can call and say, dive into that a little bit deeper?
Are you talking about the meetings, the group meetings themselves, the 2-on-2s, I call them? So
Yeah,
you're
because
saying
you
if
see,
somebody
I
meets
know
before
that's
you-
a fine line, but because, you said you wanted to bullet point those, but I would like to, and you would share that in an email form to us.
I think there may be a issue if we do it between meetings. I think we can do a master list as a group meeting so you can all discuss it, but I don't know if we can daisy chain it that way.
See, to me, so here's the deal, sort of like the council retreat we just had. I would like for us, staff, to present us with this budget, and then all of a sudden, then they present us with this introduction, like we're kind of going through tonight. You guys have your specifics that need to be done within the city. And then the council, now we get to jump into a room together without staff there. It's just John and the council. And then we start kicking it around, and we find out that we come to a consensus that we all like recreation a whole lot. And then that means Lance now has to go back to the drawing board where you were asking him to cut. I'm just throwing that as an example.
Yeah, I think we need staff there for their expertise as part of the budget discussion.
But actually, the council is the one who makes up who they're presenting what they need done. They're presenting their needs right then.
Right, they're presenting needs, and then we have to figure out how we accomplish them.
But Councilman Hemphill just ran on his ticket that he's going to give the cops 10% raise. And they laugh. But anyway, and so we need to hear that. So I want you to process that and just think, if council kind of likes that idea, then great. But I think that the goal is the staff gets us to where the city runs, and then the council now has their own vision, their own strategic vision of what they want to see done. And we're going to present that to you, and now you go back to the staff and say, staff, the council really wants to see X, Y, and Z done. Now you're going to have to, that's going to be Lance's budget, or that's going to be finance's budget, or that's going to be Morgan's with water, because that might be our consensus. And so his budget might have gone from $5 million to $10 million because he needs to drill 2 new wells. We don't know. But I think that gives us that opportunity to speak open and freely amongst the budget that we want to adopt and be happy with between council and manager. And we're not going to ask for any out-of-the-air questions. You're just going to get from us a strategic area in which we can individually agree to get to help with this budget.
Well, I think some of the discussion we had earlier was about strategic planning, and again, I don't know that I would do that without staff. I mean, they're all part of the process. But that doesn't prevent you from providing that feedback. So again, the 2-on-2s are just another point of contact for further information. You're still gonna have meetings throughout the budget process where we'll present what we're working on and where we're going. So I mean, again, I don't know that, I think the idea is that we make sure that if there's something specifically that the council's looking to do that we're not doing and that we can afford to do, or we can work toward over time, then that comes out as part of the budget process.
I get it, I just don't know that I agree.
Okay.
I like the idea of us being able to kick it amongst ourselves in a, like you said, because you said originally, a more relaxed form
Right.
with 2 councilmen, you and Alma. And I kind of like the idea of kicking around with council and John and coming away with something that where we would like to see our monies that the city has asked us to direct to is spent in the needs that have been addressed by us. Unless you guys get all the phone calls I get, then if so, then great. Then write the budget up for me.
No, we get the bills.
You know what I'm saying?
But let's go through this and have
Okay.
a look at it and see
All
where
right,
we
but
go.
I just wanted to bring that up because
Okay, all right.
I think that we need to, we all need to understand what everybody's individual concerns are.
Sure, and I think
And it's
that's
hard
part-
to get to it if I can't discuss it with somebody, or Mike can't discuss it with somebody, because there's already 2 involved.
Well, and then, you know, my door is always open too, so you can come in at any time and discuss it with me one-on-one, and we can make it be part of the discussion. I don't think,
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So a continuation of the budget calendar. So March 22nd, which is the last meeting, council meeting in March, and the 2 council meetings in April will be department budget summaries. And so we'll break out all the departments and bring those during those 3 meetings. The first meeting in May 10th, is when we'll bring a summary of the entire fiscal year 22 budget. And our goal is by May 24th to have a tentative budget that may be adopted by council. And following that, June 14th would be the public hearing for the budget and also the tax levy. Then you would reconvene into a special meeting to adopt the final budget. And finally, on June 28th, you would adopt the tax levy. So those are all of the planned dates that we have right now for the budget calendar. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to John. I'll stay close. If you have any questions, I'll still be available to answer any questions.
all right, hopefully it doesn't fall asleep on me. Okay, so now for the next section, basically what I tried to do is to kind of break this out into categories based on things we're working on, things we've discussed. And again, the whole idea of bringing it to you in advance is so that you can look at it, and if there's things you want to add, subtract, that's up to you. So the first area that we have on here, strategic planning and goal setting. Again, I think we've kind of gone over this a number of times at this point. We recently met in what I would call kind of a mini retreat. And so we have the organizational expectations document, which I want to bring on the 12th. As we have an updated version of it, I can get it out to you in advance, so we'll have an opportunity to go over that, make sure it's where we want it to be. And I think that was kind of a really good first step for us in terms of kind of defining what expectations are in various areas, what your expectations of each other are. As a result of that, there's been a discussion about wanting to maybe do some strategic planning. I've been talking to the vendor. They'd be willing to put something together. We could budget for something for next year and start working on a strategic plan. So again, that would be something to look forward going forward again. And I think that would capture, Mayor Couch, some of your concerns where, is the council's vision and where they want to go being realized within the budget process? Give us some high-level guidance on that. And then, of course, This particular document, which I call a budget guidance resolution, is more of an annualized version of it. So we do this every year, and we look at the various goals that we're looking at for that one year, but there may be things within there that may be done over multiple years in order to kind of realize something in, say, our strategic plan. So again, we have a systematic way of kind of building on that over time. Is there a reason it doesn't move? All right. So the area of fiscal management, we're in the process of working on some financial policies. Generally speaking, the guidance that I've had in other experiences is that there's a profile, things like what's a good debt service level? How do you know if your debt service is getting too high? What standards of accounting do we use? How do we manage ongoing versus one-time revenue and expenditures? So the financial policy would lay out basically a profile in those areas so that you as council would know these are guidelines that we're using in order to move forward. And so we'll know if we were to do additional debt service beyond, let's say, the police building, and we did PSPRS, which I'm not saying we will, but is that a good idea? Do we hit this threshold that we're comfortable with? So again, it would give you some guidance in terms of boundaries and good fiscal management. The other issue in here I wanted to bring up is contingency. If we had decided to move forward with PSPRS, we didn't have enough room, because you remember Alma talked about that tentative budget setting the cap. Well, we wouldn't have had enough room within that budget to move forward with a bond for PSPRS. So do we want to look at contingency items? Do we want to consider having a higher level of contingency so that if we get an external source or we need to do something like a bond, we have that capacity within the budget process? Of course, the maintenance of fund balances at 50%, we do that now. Also, we're going kind of farther into monitoring revenue and expenditure activity throughout the year. Of course, this year coming up, state shared revenue may be an issue with census. We'll see what the census impact is. So again, this is something that I've been working with Matthew a lot. You've seen the monthly reports, which is the next bullet down. So we're starting to develop information on a more regularized basis, and the design is to get it to you guys so you see what we see, you know what we're hearing, and therefore have a more regularized maintenance of our revenue and expenditure patterns. And then ClearGov, of course, is a transparency issue regarding the budget, but it also dovetails with our next slide. Public interaction, outreach, and interorganizational relationships. I think, we've had discussions about the state legislative session. Again, I've got Matthew serving as a liaison right now. So he's every week he's meeting with the intergovs at the state and the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. He's tracking bills, all bills that impact us, they discuss. We can kind of organize those bills and then pass that information along to you to let you know what's going on at the legislature. Do we need to pick up the phone? Do we need to start calling our representatives and weigh in on these issues? So again, we're going to try and do a more standardized and systematic approach to following the legislative session and bringing that information to you. Again, proactively seeking out public input regarding new city projects and programs. I think the parklets is a perfect example of this, where you as the council said, hey, have we talked to the Downtown Association? And there are other things we can do. We can set up meetings, purposive meetings for particular projects or ideas, go out in the community and see what kind of feedback we get, make that a part of our operation to outreach to the public more on specific projects. Obviously, the website, we need to keep that current. That's what people see not only locally but nationally. If people are looking at Safford, this is going to be, for many of them, their first exposure. We're currently in the process of updating the website, so we're working on a redesign right now. And also I'm working with Matthew on doing operational changes so we have liaisons within the departments that will address their departmental area on the website, and positions will be responsible for keeping that information up to date. Also looking at traditional and social media outlets, so whether it be radio or Facebook or whatever, to address issues that are more timely, if we're looking for more rapid feedback, or even if we're trying to say, hey, we're going to be working on a road, let's get it out there, let people know we're going to close the road for a certain number of days because we're doing a project. And again, work to maintain positive media relations in general with all the media outlets in the city. I won't say where that came from, but anyway, the goal here, again, big picture, is this idea of interacting with the public, right? And being more proactive in certain areas where we can really get the information out to them as effectively as we can. Human resources management's another big area that we focus on. Obviously, competitive salary and benefit structure. It's just something we do. It's something we look at on a regular basis. It's just a part of the cost of doing business. Encourage employee development through training and education. I think that's an area that we do need some work on. And I think obviously in a COVID environment, that's been somewhat difficult. But again, there are not only certifications, but there are, trainings that people can go through, and there's a whole myriad of training and education that we can use. We have educational stipends. So again, using training and education in order to, upgrade the workforce over time and get improvements in service delivery. And again, an ancillary to that, succession planning. So again, seeing where we can develop our own employees internally so that they can move up into positions. If positions get vacated, are people that work for that position, are they ready to step in and go into that next role? So what are we doing internally to encourage internal promotions and development? And again, a more specific item, do we want to discuss during this budget process PSPRS again? We have the unfunded liability. I think so far there hasn't been a lot of discussion at the state legislature, at least this year. It's not an issue. It doesn't mean that in future years we can't make it an issue as being part of the municipal policy statement creation, putting forward resolutions. So again, as we develop the relationship at the legislature, maybe we can bring some of these issues forward in the future and be more effective and see if we can get other people to sign on. I put this on there because I don't know if you guys want to address it again in this budget cycle. If not, that's fine, but I just put it on there as a specific item. Organizational management issues. We're trying to look at the creation of our budget in a more kind of rationalized process. So you have, operational items, life cycle items, and capital projects. And again, this is just kind of a logical breakout as it regards how we budget. So operational items are really the ongoing kind of things, supplies, personnel, the things that repeat every year. Life cycle maintenance is kind of that area. It's often neglected, lies between capital projects and operations. Could be buying a ladder truck, could be any number of equipment items, vehicle rotation. We're currently working on a vehicle rotation and equipment plan so that we understand the universe of the equipment and vehicles we're working with. What would it cost us on an annual basis to fund those on an ongoing basis so that we truly understand the cost of doing business on an annual basis? And then, of course, capital projects, which is obviously the project-based CIP stuff. Again, that's your highest level, your biggest ticket items, and they generally take the longest to produce. Seeking technology in order to improve service delivery. I think, even things like the website, GIS, ClearGov, there's other things we're talking about. The next bullet point on standard operating procedures, looking at utilities to see if there's a better way to process information to reduce errors. Can we use technology? Can people use iPads to, book or scan in the meters? And the form is electronic. We can pass it along more easily, cut down on errors. So again, they kind of go hand in hand. And then I'm recommending that we have legal counsel at council meetings as call-in. And it won't necessarily be at every single council meeting or work session, but certain issues, like even the issue as it regards what we put in a window. I mean, you're really getting into nuanced kind of approaches. Is it a constitutional, like First Amendment issue? Is it something else? Sometimes if legal counsel is here, or we had the attorney show up at the last meeting representing other entities, it would have been nice if we had legal counsel here also to kind of provide guidance. So again, my recommendation would be that we try to bring them in if we see there might be an issue, but I've never had council meetings where there wasn't legal counsel present, so I think it would be beneficial. Again, it's a recommendation. Economic development, obviously another area of consideration that we are often talking about. enhancements to the entertainment district. I think we went ahead, we passed the entertainment district. I think there are ways to try to bring that to life. Parklets is one of those things. There could be others. So again, are we focusing again on how do we actualize that? Interorganizational cooperation, SEGO has been working on an economic development plan, a new one. SEGO can be an opportunity, other cities can be opportunities. Maybe we try to programmatically develop something internally for economic development, and we talk to other communities. What are the steps that they would recommend if they have fully developed economic development programs? Are there things that we could do? I know there's some organizations in the valley. Do we start to participate in those and see if there's anything there where there's opportunities to cooperate? Again, this is a specific one, reassess the microloan program and the business support programs. If you recall, we put these forward, believe it or not, almost 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in September. The microloan program, I talked to Kimber Lanning a couple weeks ago. No loans have been issued. Not really surprising in the COVID environment. But the way that the MOU we did was written, if within 2 years no loans have been made, we have the ability to take that money back if we so choose. And remember, we put $100,000 out there, and plus it's earning interest, so we could either take that back, or we could, stay in it another year and see what happens. Obviously, the business support program, that's where people apply for small, essentially subsidies if they're doing built environment things, and a variety of facade programs and the like. Actually, we had one applicant that did some changes to the theater downtown. It's going to help fund some of the bathroom activity in there, so the remodeling. So again, so those two prongs of our economic development program, we probably want to revisit that and talk about, are we going in the right direction? Do we keep going? Do we have suggestions to do something else? Parklets program, obviously that'll be a discussion for the 12th. Now we can bring back to you the actual ordinance that we wrote, go over the fees, who's paying for it, what do they look like. So Lance is going to have some drawings, talk about construction size and all that, so we'll have a chance to, really flush out what that program would look like. And then I have a recommendation also to formalize the donation program. I call it a donation program. Most communities I've been in have a program of this type. It looks like we have projects or programs that are in the budget. We don't really talk about them too much. We kind of tend to carry them over. My recommendation is maybe we broaden that out to the community as a whole, and 501c3s can make recommendation or applications to acquire funding. Council can then review those applications. You can fund things the way you're funding it now. You can, change the way the funding is distributed. You could add some, it's up to you, but I think that if we formalize the program, then you will create a more equitable opportunity for other 501c3s in the city that can make application and say, here's what we're trying to do with the funding. The recommendation I got from legal counsel was essentially, you want to focus on helping people more than businesses, but if the business itself is helping people, then I think you get there anyway. So that would be a recommendation I would have for the next budget process. And that's it. So I know that's a lot to digest, and I kind of got it out there, obviously on Wednesday. I'm certainly interested in recommendations. Does this seem like it would be useful to you in the future as a part of the budget process? So I leave it up to you.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Kind of what you were talking about too. I like the setup, okay? But why not, like say, the planning and goal setting? That could almost be like a separate short meeting. Same thing with the fiscal, going over the fiscal management. Kind of breaking it up, because if I understood it right, we'd get almost everything besides a little mini meeting, with the two. When do we get the total picture?
Of the budget?
Yeah.
The budget process will continue as it always has. We'll still have all the same meetings, we'll still review all the same budgets. What this is designed to do is to make sure that we're focusing on the things that you as a council want to focus on. If there's things in here you don't want to focus on, we take them out. Or if there's things in here you want to add, we put them in. And that becomes part of what we look at as part of the budget process. So this really is kind of a blueprint. It doesn't change anything that you would do going forward or that you've done in the past. It just provides an opportunity for council to say, yes, these are the things we want to focus on, and then it becomes part of that process.
But you know, there's some items in here like public interaction, outreach, and all that stuff. There's, you know, some things we could really, you know, take a look at and discuss. And of course, there's some things we don't have to. It just seems like I'd like to get a feedback a little. I like the idea of the 2 on, you know, meeting. I like that. But then, and then it was mentioned what we'd get a summary of all of our own discussions, you know, whatever we had. That would then we could, you know, take a look at. I'd like something a little bit in between, where I wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't get a whole list of what everybody else brought up on the whole. We'd be discussing the whole process, right? When we meet with all.
Yes, none of that's changed. All this does is set the stage to make sure we're focusing on the areas that you want to focus on. If there's things in here that you don't want to focus on, we can take them out. These are fairly generic: economic development, fiscal management, strategic planning. And so within those categories, you have some more generic titles, right? Good fiscal management, but tied to those things are things like financial policies or, you know, actually going out meeting with the public and so on. So there are specific plans dealing with the legislature and having a program where we're reviewing legislation on a regular basis. So we know if there's something at the legislature that could potentially impact the community, then we have an opportunity to bring that to you so you know what's going on. So this kind of sets that table in broad categories. It addresses some specific things we're doing and then some more generic programmatic level things that we're doing. All the other stuff, the 2-on-2s, the budget process, all the budget meetings, reviewing the departmental budgets, all of that stuff will remain in place.
Want to say something, Councilman Lopez?
Well, okay, you have somebody that's gonna be paying attention to what the cities and towns are watching legislatively.
Yes.
What bills are being dropped, which ones have come forward, where they are in committee, who's carrying that, who's pushing it forward, how it's gonna affect us.
Yes.
Now, there's also legal questions that cities and towns will have out there that they're asking too in general. So we need to capture that information too. I mean, what are some of the legal questions that other cities and towns are having with this marijuana issue? You know, I can understand you want legal presence, but that's also can be gathered just as easily as the legislation questions that are going forward too.
And we tend to do that. So, for example, when we look at marijuana, you know, we get information for what Wilcox has, what Tempe has. So as a matter of course, we'll do that on an issue basis and gather that information to find out what other communities are doing. I was talking to Heath just down the road in terms of what Thatcher was doing. So on an issue basis, we tend to do that anyway when we work on what we're going to develop for ourselves.
And who else has actually taken a loan out, a bond loan for the retirement stuff? Where are other people at?
And we can have
what progress of other people making? That's information I'd like to have too.
We can do that. And it can be part of the PSPRS discussion. I think we talked a little bit about it on our earlier, but you know, Yuma did it, Flagstaff did it, I think Pinell County did it. So there are a number of communities that are doing it, and we can get you that list.
Yeah, if Matthew's going out there to gather all this information, you need to gather all that up too.
Right, but understand that those types of issues will be specific, right? So someone will be working on that, whereas the legislature, it's more of a program interaction where you're gathering all the bills that are at the legislature, working with the lead. Things like PSPRS or marijuana, whoever has that as an item and something they're working on, they will, by definition, be going out looking at those things. In fact, the vendor who's been doing some of the assistance on the bonding continues to send us information on who's getting a new bond, and I think Yuma just passed a pretty large one. So we continue to get that information, and we can pass that along to you.
And
That was last year.
the information of where we're at, we had the presentation on the insurance the other day. I never heard what other towns and cities are considering possibly getting out of Raggett or not. Or if there are gonna be some of them we know that have already left. That wasn't, I could have asked that then, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know who's gonna be left in this. If we decide to stay with Raggett, how many are gonna be left in it? And how many have gone out? And two, during that meeting, the person said some insurance people did not make a certain timeline. So therefore, they didn't present what them people were going to present. Well, that doesn't mean that that information wouldn't have been useful for us to see also.
Right.
Because they disqualified them because they didn't make it by an hour. Well, that information probably could have still been useful, possibly.
Right, but I think they do that for legal reasons.
But that doesn't mean we still can't look at it somehow, some way.
I don't think it can be part of the process by which we make a decision. I don't know if we can get that information as a side issue, but again, in terms of the process and who was eligible to provide us with insurance, if you didn't make that deadline, I'm pretty sure that you're not eligible to be part of that discussion.
Well, okay, what I'm saying, would that have been interesting to you guys or not to know?
I don't know. I guess if I'm putting something out there as an RFP, or if I'm going to a business and I'm giving them an opportunity to make money and their response is to be late, then they're probably not going to be high on my list.
Or they had more to bring to us.
So you know of an individual that was late by an hour?
No.
Okay.
One of the thing was, this is how many people I'm bringing to you, this is how many
Right,
yeah,
RFP.
this is how many I'm bringing to you. There were some others, but they didn't make the date, they didn't make the timeline.
Right.
So they weren't brought forward, so, we didn't get to hear what they had.
Right, and I can understand your point that it can't be taken for a discussion for the staff. In other words, they can't recommend to us that this other company was late on an hour or a day, but yet here's still the information, especially when you paid them $24,000 to garner, to gather that information. It should still have been provided to you.
Somehow.
Yeah, I agree with that statement.
I see what you do with, you want to, like the individual meetings we're going to have with Mrs. Villa. And that's always been helpful to me also. But I agree with the vice mayor and the mayor. I still want to talk it over with the rest of these guys, and I know that's still built in here.
Yeah.
Because that's under the summaries of, that's our chance to talk to the individual departments on the
Sure.
summaries and the wish lists and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. So,
And all we do with this document is to set the stage. Because if you think about your budget, the vast majority of your budget will be what you did in prior years, right? You're still doing paving the streets and paying police officers and putting out fires. So a large portion of what you do is going to repeat. There will be that small piece that may be new, but it's quite small. And so the idea behind this is that conceptually, are we working on the things that you want to be working on?
Yep.
And this kind of sets that stage, right? Through very broad categories with some specifics within it. So economic development, strategic planning, and all those types of issues. So again, this is designed as a kickoff point for the budget process. It doesn't replace it.
and then you have fiscal management, the creation of financial policies. We've had some pretty good policies up till now because we're in pretty good shape.
Right.
So I'd not necessarily, I still want to see, again, what our policies are before I want to go changing them or consider changing them.
Right.
We got some that, for example, you can't use one-time monies for continuing expenditures.
Right.
that one we put in place a couple of times last year and brought it up, that we know that's the policy.
Right.
So there's some policies that are already good, so.
And those would be part of this, so we're just putting them all in one place.
Yeah, but I mean, and your policies aren't gonna do us, our policies aren't gonna do us any good if we don't know what they are, so.
Exactly.
We-
That's
okay.
the whole point.
Yeah, and the policy of how much, fund balance we want, things like that. Before we change anything, I want.
Yeah, I don't know that we're necessarily changing it, we're codifying it, right? So we're putting it all in one place so you can
Yeah.
see it, but there, I think there are things where, you know, like level of debt service, those are things that you would decide. Now, there are state statutes that say what your limit is, but usually it's so high you don't want to go there. So is there some other level, and what are other cities doing? Again, back to your other point, which is, well, let's go talk to some other communities and see what their limit is and what they set it at, to give ourselves, because it's not like it's chiseled in stone somewhere. You've got to decide where you're comfortable, right? And so, so you codify those, so you know what they are as the basis for how you, oh, if we start to issue debt and you start to hit a certain amount that starts to bump up against that criteria you set, well, then you're aware of it. It gives you something to know where you're at.
And so, and also with, we have satisfied several of our apartments' fund balance. We have satisfied what our target is. So, and now you're kind of talking about increasing the contingency fund to reflect that, so that we can be poised to take advantage of things on the horizon.
Right, exactly. So what I'm saying is, we've had contingency all along. If we had decided to go forward with the PSPRS bond, we couldn't have, because we didn't have enough room within our budget cap to issue that bond. So if you have a contingency, and I'm not saying that you have to, I'm just raising this as an issue for you to discuss, you may want to consider having it so that in the future, if those opportunities come up, you can take advantage of them. Those monies would not be able to be expended unless you had an external revenue source for them, as in this case, a bond.
All right, but so you're not suggesting raising the tentative budget unless we actually feel we can support the things.
Right, well, you have to be comfortable with whatever we put forward. I'm simply saying that the real-world example of the PSPRS unfunded liability issue, the
there.
way we passed our budget, would not have allowed you. So let's say we were trying to take advantage of a lower interest rate that we knew was on the way up. And so we wanted to move as quickly as possible. You couldn't have moved on it because you didn't have the capacity in your budget to do so. And so I'm saying, as long as you're comfortable with having that capacity just in case, you would make it part of your budget, but it could only, obviously, and we would have to come to you to expend it, so it's not like you wouldn't know it's being expended.
I like the theory of what you want to look at all these areas, and I agree with you.
Yeah, and again, it's a way of providing a blueprint for you to look at and then provide feedback on. So let's say you don't agree with contingency, then we don't do it. You know, if the council looks at it and says, we're not comfortable raising the, geez, it looks like the budget went up a lot, is the public going to react negatively to that? If you're not comfortable with doing that, then we won't do it. But there are ramifications for it, and so what I'm trying to do is let you know what they are.
So Mayor, does that answer you? We are still gonna be able to talk to one another and not, you,
To an extent, you do, but I still haven't heard anywhere in this presentation that the council is given guidance whatsoever about their tentative budget, what they want to see.
in a group.
In a group.
Well,
I see what staff is presenting, this is what staff's recommending. Staff's recommending, let's talk about bringing in legal counsel at every single council meeting. That's going to affect our budget. Let's talk about,
I'm recommending,
well, you're talking about it.
right, so you don't have to agree with it.
Right.
If you want to take it out, we take it out.
And there's just other things, you know, like some of these, so proactively talk about public input regarding new city projects. You know, so I mean, those are things that staff has brought and said, is this good enough for you guys? I don't know, I'm asking you guys, is it good enough for you? Or do you want, I mean, I never will forget the budget session we had around our tables, and Vice Mayor really wanted those stinking lights around the walking trail. And I'm like, really? They're the best damn thing we've done in the last 2 years. Seriously. And it is. I look at them every night. No, and you know what it is? And there's still people that use them. I mean, they're not walking at 8 o'clock. I mean, they could shut off sometime on a timer, but nevertheless, that was good. And it was something that he brought up at our little roundtable discussion that wasn't even on here that you guys brought to us at all. It was something that the vice mayor, probably a citizen, talked to him about it, or he saw that, hey, this was our investment years ago. People are walking tad bit after dusk, and it ended up working. And I was against it, but yet I liked the concept. And now being a done project, you know, we all got to lavish in something, and at that time, you know. So I just think that there needs to be items where the council needs to come in here and say, hey, John, this is what we need to do too. Damn it, this is our budget.
But this is your opportunity to do that.
Well, that's
Right,
what
all
they
I'm
want.
giving, instead of giving you nothing and then sitting here and saying, hey, what do you think? I've outlined some things that are fundamental to creating a good fiscal policy and budget process, things like public outreach, right? So I'm giving you some of the broad categories that exist in cities and towns across the country. What I'm saying to you is this was staff's version. This was our cut at it to give you something to work off of. And now it's your chance to provide your thoughts. That's the whole point of this, is now if there's something you're after, if there's something you want, if there are things you want out, if you feel, for example, that having the attorney present at the council meetings, you don't want to do it, then if you guys don't want to do it, we take it out.
Yep.
So truthfully, you're looking at an increase of budget this entire year. For the next year, you're looking at what, a 5% increase? You already know what you're asking. Do you seriously think that you're gonna have a 5% increase, or is it going to be a little higher?
No. What it's going to be is we're going to provide a revenue projection, and we're going to bring you a balanced budget, and we'll see what programs are in there. You still have the opportunity to put them in or take them out. I've got a meeting, I don't know if it's this week, on the revenue model. So we haven't even done the revenue projection at this point, but everything that we do will be predicated on whatever the revenue stream is. And some of that's going to be state shared revenue. We don't know the impact of the census, so.
But the reason why, John, I'm saying that about the increase in next year's budget is because we were presented with, during the COVID hit, we still increased our sales tax revenue.
Yes.
And we all realize that stuff does go up, but we also all of us sat in the same meeting, and I'd love to have heard what everybody else had to say about the questions that was asked in their insurance meeting. But you know, like now, before it comes to a vote, are we going to hear HR's recommendation on what was that was presented, going 80-20 or whatever it was?
Yes.
I mean, are we going to hear that prior to a budget session? Give us an opportunity to discuss
Yes.
that? Or are they even saying, no, we're not even going to present that because we, as our staff, don't even think that's legit or even comfortable in doing?
No, that's
you
not
know?
how it works. We'll present all the information, and including, you know, we'll discuss what we're gonna do with the insurance. Do you wanna do any increase in terms of what the city takes on? Do you wanna do short-term disability? Those are all part of the discussion of the budget process. The budget will be whatever you decide it's gonna be. It will go up or go down by whatever amount you decide it's going up or down. All we're doing is bringing you the facts and recommendations. You ultimately still make the decision. And we're not at a point where we could say it's going up or down or anything at this point. Again, we're setting the stage. We'll look at what comes up, and then, as what a budget is, you're prioritizing limited resources. How do you prioritize those resources, and what do you spend them on? You know, do you want a 5% increase? Do you want a 2% increase? You can have it either way. Obviously, with 2%, you get less than you get at 5. Do you get everything you want at 5? Well, you know, that's a discussion.
I think the reason why I have such heartburn on this is because of what even happened to us last year, discussing the employees, and Councilman Seal was big on this as well. And it seems like always presented at the very last moment. We talked about more monies, you know, and this and that and the other. So those are the things that needs to be hammered out prior to all of this, to where at the last minute, it's not being put back on us again. And it's, I mean, I don't know. I hear everybody's discussion. I've heard Vice Mayor, I've heard Arnold. Anybody else like to chime in on this? If you guys are liking this present, are you guys wanting to see something added on? Let's do it.
What they're doing, they're presenting it to us a little earlier than, you know, I think we're gonna see some of the things you were talking about a little earlier than what we did in previous years.
Yeah,
You're gonna see everything you saw before. All this is doing is trying to get a sense from you guys. Are we on the right track, so that when we bring you the budget, we're trying to focus on things that you want us to focus on?
We're gonna speak up with what we want, and if we don't, they're gonna let us know what we've left on the table in past years, what they're in position to work on this time, where things can go, and then they're gonna give their projects that they still have in their back pocket, some of them. What they can work on now, they're gonna present to us.
Okay, but
So,
I've heard you up here talk about a substation. I don't see it on here.
It's in the CIP, and this, we're not there yet. We haven't gotten that
Okay.
far yet. Remember, all of the pieces of the budget process that you've experienced in the past still exist. This is the context for that, to say, are we on the right track? Now, some things we're still gonna be doing, things like a substation. At some point, you're gonna have to do that, and you have to figure out when. It's not a choice, it's really a question of when and how much. There are other areas where you have more latitude, but obviously, doing day-to-day operations, it's still, you have to expend funds.
You have anything on here for recreation?
I do not.
we will be given.
But we can, that's the point. Do you want something, do you have some ideas regarding recreation that you want to pursue?
It's kind of been the direction for the last 3 years.
Well, I haven't been there that long.
I know you haven't.
So get me up to speed.
We'll get it.
So,
I'd like to see something on recreation.
but you gotta give
I
me
mean,
something to go on. So if we say recreation,
What happened to the park down there off of El Paso?
it's in the process, that was grant funded, it's, I don't know if it's
Okay,
this
when was
year
the
or
last,
next
we haven't
year.
had no update on, so in other words, that's a good time, it's a good discussion, it's a good topic.
Yeah.
Recreation is big. I don't know if any of you guys even understand what our population is and where we're headed. You know, we're being, our percentage of population is more geared towards the younger generation. We better jump on board, or they're gonna vote every one of us out and fill this seat with young generation people.
So if you
And I
have-
agree.
So what do you?
But I'm just saying, we need to be processing that, you know, where the millennial generation has really taken over in our area. If you look at what has come up, I have the report. I pulled the report, and I can share that report with you, and I can show that to you. So we need to be focusing on that area, and that could be the really a good area of downtown, you know, focusing on the downtown district area. Because, you know, they like to have wine, drink outside, and party until 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't call me past 8, you know, but anyway, I think that needs to be on there. I mean, that's entertainment districts and recreation. Those are huge items. I want my people to stay here. I don't want them going to Phoenix and play Topgolf.
Right, well, the entertainment district is on there.
Okay, we need, you know, so I just think, you know, we got.
No, so when you say recreation, are you saying
Well,
you want?
I think, recreation could be softball, baseball, parks. Recreation could be the same thing with making sure that, you know, like downtown could be more adapted for areas in the evening time, more inviting, you know. Our goal, I would love to see restaurants stay open past 8 o'clock, you know, for that generation that likes to hang out past 8 o'clock, you know, but hey, we don't control that,
Right.
you know.
But that's a
not ours,
long-term
but-
goal, right? So you got the theater being renovated, we're talking about doing parklets, right? We may
Yeah,
be
so that's
acquiring some new-
strategic, that's getting us in that,
Right.
that area.
Right. And some of those may require additional funding. That's the other side. You know, do you want a recreation center? Yes. Do you want to pay for a recreation center?
No.
Well, they have to go hand in hand, right?
And it's just areas like, just maintaining the parks that we do have, upgrading the parks that we do have on a constant basis, up in the water to where the grass actually looks green instead, you know, and what we can do. Councilman, Anzol, what do you have?
Well, my main thing is that I've been asking for is sidewalks and tortilla flats. That's my,
So far, you've got a good timeline lined up of meetings and stuff where we can continue to have some good constructive discussion.
Yes. Again, none of the budget process has gone away. I was just trying to give you guys an opportunity to see what we're looking at and give you an opportunity to do exactly what the mayor's saying, which is if you want to provide some additional insight or guidance. And again, it doesn't mean that, so let's say we focus on recreation. It may not happen next year, but maybe we start working
Right,
today
it's
toward a
strategically
longer-
getting us there.
Right. So we begin today to work toward that goal.
And see, that's where I think it's wrong for us to tell staff at the very, after they've already pulled their stuff together and have already got numbers together, and then all of a sudden, we sit there and tell them, we didn't like it. You know, when they've developed something without us talking tonight over what we would like to see, kind of how you prepared, that gives them more of an opportunity to get this budget written or tighter to where they can, so that Lance can now go into your office and you're saying, Lance, why is there a 15% increase in your budget? How do you think I'm going to get the council on board with that? Lance is going to say, I heard them say that they want to see this and within, you know, like a goal or 5 years, they want to get us there. So that's their strategic. And so I'm trying to start it right here to get us to there. And you know, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if we don't hear it from us, then staff's doing their job, writing up a budget that is actually working.
Right.
You know,
And very focused at ground zero, right? So we don't have strategic plans. We don't have them at the city level. We don't have them at the department level. So we're focusing on day-to-day operation and immediate need.
Right.
If you want to expand on that, and again, there may be funding issues with that. But again, you start the discussion and figure out what it looks like. You may do some things, you may not do some things.
Right. Good to keep on going? Good?
I'm good if you're good.
You guys good?
Good.
All right, we're going to close the work session and go into regular meeting. Ordinance number 11-1, ordinance 021-02. Y'all had a chance to look at it? We need a motion.
Okay, let's see. This is on the manufactured home?
No, ordinance 2002 is basically Dr. Phelps's place down there. Both 1 and 2 are going to be Dr. Phelps. Oh, wait,
No.
we're tabling ordinance 21-2. That's tabled. You guys okay with that? Do you need a
Yes.
vote on tabling it?
So move.
No, you can just
Second.
table it.
We're just
Just
tabling
table
it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So number one.
number 1 is tabled.
021-002 is tabled.
Yes.
Tabled.
Okay.
Okay,
And Susan's going to be coming back to us with the whereases.
The guys is,
11-2, this is the ordinance 2104. That's the property that Councilman McGoy was working diligently on.
I move we approve ordinance number 021-004.
Second.
All those in, any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 12, new and old business.
So this is the minutes for the January 11th council meeting. Did anybody have any questions on it?
Everybody had a chance to look at it?
I think I brought up the one about the lawyer identifying themselves, because sometimes when we've heard staff say, well, you approved it, it's in the minutes, so we need to make sure it's in the minutes. Even though I've been called the mayor and the vice mayor before,
Mayor,
so.
Mayor and Council, this is
Yeah.
Susan. Can I interrupt for a second?
Yep,
On the second reading of the ordinance, does Tammy need to read that into?
Yeah, she does. Thanks,
Yes,
thanks, Susan.
okay.
Tammy, you're supposed to get after
such a
me.
bureaucrat.
get after
You want to read that, please, on 2104?
Sure. Ordinance number 021-004, an ordinance of the city of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.08 definitions, Chapter 17.40 AR Agricultural Residential District, and Chapter 17.52 C2 Highway Commercial District of the city of Safford Municipal Code relating to hospitals and clinics for animals, kennels, and stables.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Susan, for remembering. We thought you were done asleep. We heard snoring, and I didn't know if that was your dog or what, but I'm just kidding.
I'm here.
I'm just playing. 12-1, we're back on the minutes, and Councilman Lopez, you were on that one.
Okay, we're done.
You're good with that one?
Yes.
Okay, I need a motion.
So motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as read, or as looked at. Everybody, I say, okay? Vote on it?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any
Sorry.
opposed? Motion passes. Reports on the P card report. Everybody have a chance to look at that? Councilman Lopez, everything look good there?
Nope.
No? Go, bring him up.
You see,
You already did?
no,
Okay.
okay. I see let's see, replacing one phone and
What page number?
page,
It should just be on like 30 of
page
37.
30, yeah. Now, it says replace one phone, and then, I don't know if we purchase 4 more phones in IT. Yet, the money's is coming out of accounting. Shouldn't that come out of IT?
Mayor and Councilman Lopez, the way that the P card report works, that whoever is using their purchasing card to pay the vendor, it shows up under their department, but when the Verizon bill, for instance, is paid, it actually is distributed to every division, every department. And so in that particular instance, we replaced one phone in the AMI, and then we replaced 4 phones in the IT department, and that was the charge. Our Lisa in accounts payable, she pays the bill with her P card, and then we expend that out to each department.
So it didn't come out of Lisa's budget.
It did not come out of Lisa's budget, that is
Okay.
correct.
Now, this is gonna be part of the budget discussion, because there's some things, and this is kind of petty, but I consider it like the water jug. Okay, when summertime comes, we're gonna get all brand-new water jugs again, when they're still good. So everybody's gotta start paying a little attention and not spending more than they need to. I know, like jackets, that they got 3 jackets, $450. Okay. I think them jackets last longer than a year, so I don't expect to see it next year, the same purchase.
Mayor Councilman Lopez, that is correct. I have all new staff in the AMI department, and we did budget in the current fiscal year to get them all jackets, and they are all full-time employees, and we plan for them to be hanging around for a while, so you
Yeah.
are correct. It is not an annual expense that we will have.
I need, they, even what they wear identifies them when they go in somewhere, so we want that to be able to
Correct.
be seen. It's just
Yes.
like the police officers, they know who they are. I'm not saying they don't get stuff, but not every year. And let's see, like calendars. We probably spent $500 on calendars. Now, we got vendors, Caterpillar, Snap-on, stuff like that brings calendars. Why we always gotta buy so many calendars? It's the little things that this year I hope people start paying attention to. These vendors will bring us calendars. And then planners for supervisors, $326.
What page are you on?
I'm on 31. $326 for planners for supervisors. Them are some pretty fancy planners.
I think they all have iPads.
Yeah, then they
They
work
can
on
use
their
their
iPad.
iPads.
I'll
for-
address this one.
Okay.
My supervisors don't have iPads. These are daily planners, daily log of each day and each calendar day has a page. They take notes, they do staff safety meetings. This is something they use every single day and make notes in. I'm included in it. So I've got 6 different supervisors that get, it comes in half-year sections, so it's a Franklin planner. Comes from 6 months at a time, so we do the first 6 months and the second 6 months. This covers the whole year for 6 supervisors.
This is a need, not just a want.
It is, but you're right, we're getting more and more in the direction of where this will probably go away and be more digital. We're not quite there. This is something we've done, the last 5 years, we've done this with the supervisors, but as we progress more digital, this will probably go away.
Well, this comes just like boots. I mean, I know they wear their boots out, some of them get them full of water in the trenches and stuff, they need replaced. But we don't get them just because it comes due, that we can get a new pair of boots now. You know, when they're wore out, then we get them, but it's not just gonna be a luxury.
We grant one pair of boots per employee a year, and that, I tell you what, a pair of boots won't last a guy in my
Yeah,
department a year. It
there's
doesn't even
plenty.
last me a year. I buy 2 pair myself, so, we grant them $150 for boots.
Yeah.
And to answer your question on jackets, we will have jacket charges on a yearly basis, but it's not every employee. It's the ones that have wore theirs out for 3 or 4 years and look pretty ragged, we'll replace those in it. And so there'll be a few each year. It's not the whole entire division. It's the ones that have been there and wore it and, wore it out over 4 or 5 years and need something so they look a little more respectable.
Well, I've been on the other end of this too, so, I know how that goes. Now, pest control. We have a deal with the pest control, a contract, but when it comes to bees, we pay extra for each bill deal, and it says bee removal. Do they remove them or do they kill them?
They remove them typically.
Okay, so, and some of these are like on pumps by the Victory Fellowship. We know annually when they come and go, so instead of having removing stuff, put something on there to deter them from even coming around. They make stuff to stop them ahead of time. So, just another added daughter. There's some more calendars, $144. But, okay, this one, and I'm sure there's an explanation for this one. 14, to me, it looks like pistols. Glock, LE, 17GS, 9mm, $7,000 for 14 of them.
Mayor, Councilman Lopez, yes, this was a grant from the Attorney General's office that purchased half of the pistols to replace all the pistols in our department. It also purchased the red dot sights for the pistols, the holsters for the pistols. It's $21,000 total. This paid for the first 14 pistols for the 24 that we need.
24.
So this was all paid for through a grant.
Okay. So, because I'm still wondering where the old pistols go and things like that.
So what happens is with the old pistols, they have to be traded into an FFL license, and so you'll see more coming as we do that, because the old pistols get traded in for new ones. They give us credit, and so we'll buy more pistols to outfit the entire department. The ones that we have, springs are worn out, things are gone, but I mean, just over time, it's been years since we've replaced them. I still have the gun I carry in my gun belt I've had since 2007. So it's time to replace them. We got a grant that paid for like I said, 50% of the guns, a little over 50%, and all the sights and holsters and things that go with it. We'll be trading the current ones we have in for credit to purchase the remaining pistols over the next few months.
So they're all gonna get 9mm now, huh?
9mm is the new suggested by the federal standards. They've upgraded the round to have the same force and power as a .40 caliber.
Easier to get a 9mm bullet right now.
Much cheaper. Well, it's not. I will tell you, there's more coming. We just ordered ammunition for 9mm. They're telling us we'll be lucky if we have it by July, and for our rifle ammunition, we'll be lucky if we have it by next January. So we're ordering a year in advance on the hopes that we'll have it.
That explanation will help me lessen the chew out that I've been getting on this one. So.
Yeah. So all that you're seeing on there currently, though, that was all strictly from grants.
Okay. I believe that's all I have, Mayor. But I do hope this year we tighten our belt a little bit. Shovels, all kinds of stuff, truck inventory. If you need it, you need it. If you don't get it. Let's tighten up a little bit. That's all.
Okay, did you have a chance to look at the expenses over 5,000?
Yep.
Don't tell me there's calendars.
And no, not $5,000 worth.
All right, going once, going twice. Revenues over 5,000 report. Have a chance to look at that. Prosecution report. Announcement of current events by council. Mike, what's going on? Anything?
Nothing right now.
No, you're not getting on the air anytime soon?
I'll be on there Thursday.
Everybody listen on Thursday. You'll hear Mike talk. Got anything for the parades? Anything? Is anything going on? Are they
We're looking
canceled?
forward to the 4th of July parade, so let's keep that in mind that we are able to have one.
Okay.
So on Main Street. Yeah, there was an awful lot of police cars and fire trucks, and I want to thank the fire department and the police department for responding. So thank you guys very good.
What'd you
Very
do?
good job. Huh?
What'd you do?
I was inhaling smoke inside the house.
You legal? Is it legal now to inhale
Well,
smoke
I
inside
won't
the
say no
house?
more.
Recreational.
Yeah, recreational. There you go.
Anybody have anything on, any more on the current events? No? Report on operational items. I don't think we have any. We're good?
My turn.
Go for it.
We adjourn.
All those in favor?
Second. Bye.
I knew that was mine. My last item there.
Susan, you still?